Welcome to episode 215 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again. And had a little bit of a breather now post the quite spectacular families launch. So delighted about that. And we've got a family story today, haven't we?
Yeah, back once again with a very close friend of Wealth Builders, Mr. Chris Henry. And Chris is someone you've known for many years, Kevin, actually now. And Chris then has followed the steps that we teach and followed your wisdom, your guidance. In fact, I believe did some mentoring with you as well. And then that led to being a wealth coach for our members, passing on the lessons. So
what a transition for Chris. And as you say, a true friend of Wealth Builders. And I know we're going to listen to Chris, so I won't preempt that. But you can hear the lessons that we're trying to share, not just in the wealth lessons, but the family lessons. You can hear them coming out, and it's just a real pleasure to see that somebody's embracing all the things full on, and that's transforming the lives of himself and his wife Tracy, who's a lovely person as well. I don't know the children as well. I've met Ben and Alex, but never met Owen. But wonderful family, and you can see some of the lessons are now being taught there too. So quite a fascinating insight through your questions of him. And I think I just commend you, Chris, because he said a few times, that's a great question. And you did have some good questions on that one. It must have been one of your better days.
Must have been indeed. Yeah, so you'll hear from Chris how education has played a massive part in his wealth building journey, and also the importance of getting clear on your reason why. So let's not hang around. Let's listen to our conversation today with Mr. Chris Henry. Chris, welcome back to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
I'm really good, Christian. It's good to see you. Good to reconnect with Wealth Talk and with you.
Yeah. I know. It's lovely to see you. Of course, we know you as a client, a friend, also a previous wealth coach, looking after many of our members for 3 years or so. And tell us what you've been up to this year in terms of business and.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I very much work a 3-day week, even though I'm sat here on a Friday talking to you, but this is pleasure, So, yeah, but what's been going on, I'm still coaching. I've still got the Action Coach franchise, business and some wealth coaching. But the emphasis for me is moving towards the Aspire business. So I've got a joint venture with an amazingly talented guy called Chris Payton up in the Northeast. And we've got a business there that is developing commercial to residential properties and HMOs. So that has to be the focus for me moving forward. So the emphasis has shifted this last 12 months, but really excited what's going on. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's great. And you're someone who fully, has followed the steps that we talk about in Wealth Builders, and you've shared that on previous podcasts, and it's worked for you. You've seen it work for others. And today our conversation is really, how can we extend this now to help the next generation, right? Yeah. And start passing on some of this wisdom, some of these lessons that perhaps we weren't taught when we were younger, right? Because they don't teach this stuff in schools.
100%. Yeah. A lot of people have talked about this, Christine, family wealth, but nobody's actually done it, So it's great to see Kevin and yourself actually putting this into place, because a lot of people talk about it, but I'm looking forward to kind of seeing it develop and contribute wherever I can. And this is the start, really, I think. So fantastic. Yeah.
Appreciate that. So I know this is a subject close to your heart, Chris. So let's start with your family. So tell us a bit more about the members of your family, please.
Yeah, so we're a blended family. Myself and Tracy been together for 20 years, 3 children between us. Ben, they're all kind of grown-ups now, so that colours the way you kind of discuss money with them. But Ben's, I forget the ages, but they're in the late 20s, 30. Ben's 30, Alex is 28, 29. If they're watching this and I've got the ages wrong, I'm going to be in trouble, Chris. And Owen's 22, so Owen's Tracy's son. So yeah, it's a great family unit.
Yeah. So we're talking really about how can we help the next generation to, I guess, be the guardians of all the good work that we're doing ourselves now to build assets, to enjoy life, to have more freedom and time, which you mentioned yourself is really important. What are some of the things that you've experienced with bringing up children over the years, Chris, in terms of helping to introduce conversations around money, and how have you gone about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I suppose you always look to your own childhood first, don't you? I suppose, because that's the platform for how you operate, really. And I suppose I'll just give some reflections on my childhood, because it does have a big impact. And mindset is obviously a fundamental part of wealth and money. that's not a word I ever knew about really until maybe 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't a word that was in our vocabulary. Certainly as a child that it wasn't, you know. So you know, for me, it starts with the mindset around money. And if I think about our childhood, it was a great childhood, a very working class upbringing, but there wasn't a lot of money. There certainly wasn't. And the word for me was scarcity. You know, it just didn't, certainly in our world, working class, my dad was a catering manager, mum was in catering. Things were tight, you know, and that has a big impact on your attitude to money and to wealth, certainly right into your later years. So, and even the words that you hear, you know, I can remember my dad now, he died kind of 10 years ago. His language really hinted at the scarcity, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. You know, what do you think I'm made of money? You know, all these kind of things, shut the door because you're letting all the heat out, you know, all these things that are embedded into your psyche because things were tight, you know. And I remember when my dad died and we were sorting out the will, and I looked at his last payslip, and he never used to tell us how much he earned again, but it was a very private thing then, money. Maybe it still is now, I don't know, but it shouldn't be. And I was shocked how little he earned. His last payslip, he earned £1,300 for the month, and there were 6 of us in the family. You know, this is only kind of 15 years ago. He'll finish working, and I was shocked how little he earned. But what a great childhood we had, you know. So you know, having money doesn't necessarily mean you can't be happy because we had a great childhood. But these are things that have a big impact on you. We very rarely went out for meals. You know, I remember the one and only time I went out for a meal, which I recall, we had a premium bond each, Christian, and I know we talk about premium bonds as well. And my brother won 25 quid on the premium bond, and we went out for a meal. And I can remember what I ate. That's how precious that meal was. It was a Chinese meal. But it seems a lot more abundant these days for our children, does money, but it certainly wasn't in those days. So they're kind of my reflections on my childhood. But obviously, you translate that into how do you bring your children up and what's their attitude to money moving forward. And I suppose when the kids were younger, we didn't really talk about money with them really up until, I suppose, if I think about it, until I started learning about it. And I only started learning about it when I left banking. You know, I'm an accountant, a chartered accountant, Christian. And you know, I could count everybody else's money, but I wasn't very good at kind of being aware of our money or our wealth, you know. So it was only until I left when I left banking that I started to realise and actually met wealth builders and started to learn about assets and not swapping time for money. Then you got something to share. So, but even as an accountant, you know, I wasn't really prepared for the conversation. And again, if I think about school. School was great, and I did economics and I did maths, but it's all the theory, you know, it's the macro stuff. It's not the micro stuff. It's not bringing it into the real world. And I think that for me was what was missing. Maybe there's a bit more of it around now, but I think it certainly needs embellishing and the kids need better preparing. I think there's no doubt about it. Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of moments that kind of stand out for me when the kids started to ask about money was when they leave home and they've got to get a mortgage and they don't know about credit cards and they don't know about bank accounts and what is a mortgage, and then they start to ask the questions, you know. So but they're not prepared for it, and we as parents have to take responsibility for that, I think, and make sure we're prepared and we can pass on the lessons, you know. So
sure. And you know, schools obviously have their curriculum and they do a great job at that, but you know, the discussions around mortgages, pay slips, you know, and managing money, saving, interest, all of this, obviously that's not built into the curriculum. Do you feel that there's a gap there? Do you think it could be introduced and that would be beneficial to younger adults?
I do, but I do. I think, but it needs more than that, Christian. I think. I mean, you know, that's the theory, isn't it? I think, and you know, I mean, and I don't know. Maybe I'm not being disrespectful to teachers, but maybe are they the best people to kind of share insights into money and wealth? You know, maybe some are, maybe some aren't. But it's not just about the theory. And again, you know, some of the theory was there for us at a macro level when we were at school, but how does that translate into real life? So I think there is a gap, but I think the gap. For me, between the theory and the practice is all about, you know, discussing it with real people that are doing it, you know, getting in amongst a community of people that are doing it, having a network that doesn't exist at school, a network of people who understand and are good on the money front. So there's a lot more to it. I think practical examples, site visits, all that kind of stuff, that can't happen at school. So these are the things that I think need adding into the mix to get our children into a place where they understand money and what it actually represents.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. You know, the theory based versus the experiences, because it's going out and it's experiencing it, seeing it. So obviously, you know, you've invested in property for many years now, Chris. And you know, have you taken, you know, Ben, Alex, have they come out and seen what you're doing, and does that make a difference to them?
Kristen, I've got a shiver down my spine because it really does. That it brings it to life. It really does. And I think, you know, I believe our children learn a lot more from what they see than what you tell them. You can tell them and tell them and tell them until they see the evidence of how you've operated your life, not just on the money front, but generally. Then they start to take more notice. So, yeah, I'll tell you what, Kristen, one of my proudest moments, we've got a development up in Newcastle. It's a big development that Chris and myself have been involved with. And we get our investors together every quarter. And to see Ben, Alex, Owen and my granddaughter at the back of the room, and I feel emotional telling you about this, just to see them at the back of the room and realize that this is their legacy. That is what it's all about, you know, and they were really, really impressed because they know they're going to get the benefit of it, you know, at the end of the day. So a very precious moment, and it does bring it to life for them, and it sets them on the journey of getting more involved in money and in wealth and learning about it because they can see the benefits, you know. So yeah, very, very powerful, Christine. That it really is involving them in what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's really, you know, what we're trying to do here is cradle to grave, is the legacy, is intergenerational wealth. You know, are there any other reasons for you personally why that's important?
Well, I mean, legacy is crucial, isn't it? I think, but I mean, I believe that, you know, the best legacy for our children is education. You know, I really do. You know, it's not just about passing assets on to them; it's about getting them educated. Because otherwise they can take control of the assets, but if they haven't got the education, the discipline to be able to kind of operate it and run it, well, they're going to waste it or they're going to be in trouble. So yeah, I think legacy is important, but education for me is equally as important. The other thing for me, I suppose, is you know, we talk in wealth about, you know, not swapping time for money, and all our kids are very aware of that, and they're starting to kind of make inroads into making sure they're not dependent on a time for money approach. So yeah, education, legacy, it's all part of kind of what we're creating, and it's got to be fun though. It's got to be fun, you know, and it is fun, and it's fun having them around. It really is.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. You know, obviously when you think of children, their first interaction with money tends to be pocket money, right? Is parents giving them some money for something. How did you go about that? Was it simply exchange for tasks? Because talk about time for money there. So, you know, children getting used to kind of like doing something and getting rewarded. Did you approach it differently, or? We did.
I wish I'd done what you just said, because I think it's a great, you know, the idea of rewarding a child for reading a book, which I know I picked that up from Rob Moore. You know, that's a great way of kind of bringing them along. I'll be honest, we didn't do it the right way. You know, we gave them everything. And I think that's a reaction against, in some ways, how little we had as children financially. So in some ways you can overcompensate, which I don't think is the right thing, because then they don't really appreciate the value of money. So, you know, we were the exact opposite. We gave them everything we possibly could when they were children, all the holidays. And I don't think they have an appreciation for the value of money until they get to the point where they're earning it. And then they realize how much it costs, how much it takes to earn the value of a meal, you know. We still have problems trying to get them to get their hand in the pocket when we have a family meal. You know, you sit around the table, and there's that tumbleweed moment at the end of the meal when the bill arrives, and you know the grown-ups, they're still looking at us as parents. We've created that situation, and I don't think that's the right way. I think they should, you know. But you live and learn, don't you? You live and learn. So that's a lesson for everybody. That's got,
So tell us a bit more about their kind of personal interests. And obviously I've met Alex, and we've had a chat about her business ideas. And so I know that the entrepreneurial bug has bitten her, at least. Tell us a bit more about that, Chris.
Yeah, and I think that's important, Christine, as well. And again, I think that's where, I mean, you know, coaching for me has been a complete game changer, not because I'm a brilliant coach, but it's just the doors it opens. I mean, Action Coach, who I've got a franchise with, led me to Kevin, led me to you, led me to wealth, led me to, you know, so life's a journey, isn't it? I think, and those kind of doors open, and you've just got to seize the opportunities as you go through each door. But in terms of the kids, so coaching has helped me coach the kids. I didn't really know what coaching was, but I actually coach all three of our children. And one of the first conversations I had with Ben, my son, they're very different personalities. Ben's a web developer, very techie, quite an introvert, but he was working for an agency in Keighley, earning a half decent salary. But when we had a coaching session and we worked out how many websites he needed to create for himself to be able to replace his salary with the business he was working with. I think it was 5. That's all he needed to create in a year would replace an annual salary. That was a light bulb moment for Ben. So, and he's working for himself now, and he's doing really well. He's got VAs in the Philippines. He's got quite a big contract with Dermalogica. He's a Shopify specialist, and he's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman, and I can't tell you, Christine, how much owning your own business and running your own business, what an education that is. It really is. And I remember Ben coming to me early doors saying, I've just realized, Dad, that when I send an invoice out, the money doesn't just come in, does it? I have to wait 4, 5, 6 weeks for it. Yeah, Ben, that's called a cash gap. It's just a fantastic education. So Ben was the first out the traps really in terms of being an entrepreneur, and they're all doing it. Owen's a barber, so he's not quite as driven as Ben, but and he's got a business, and he generates an income because of the skill that he's acquired. Alex, she's very much into online as well. So she's had the benefit of learning about wealth and learning about action coach and being in amongst the right people that have got the right mindset. So they're all away. They're all entrepreneurs, and I can't tell you how proud I am, Christine, of what they're achieving. The trick is they've potentially still got jobs, and it's not an asset until it works without you, and that's the key. Okay, so Ben's still got a job, Owen's still got a job, and Alex has still got a job. They've got to find a way of leveraging systems and other people to create an asset so they can back away and do the fun stuff, which is what we're doing.
Absolutely, that's right. And that key word of recurring income, right? That's really what gives you the freedom. So, these are some of the lessons, obviously, we teach at the heart of Wealth Builders. And, are they understanding, or should I ask, how did they begin to understand, about compound interest saving, thinking longer term? Because as a young person, perhaps, certainly in this day and age, social media, everything's very immediate. You want quick results. You want everything today. But we know that wealth isn't built overnight. Wealth takes time, right? So it's about that kind of delayed gratification. Have you had conversations with them about that?
Yeah, we have. And you just on compound interest again, I did maths with stats at A-level at university, and great concept. But that was the theory. I got no idea how valuable that is in my life, and it is the 8th wonder of the world, isn't it, when you think about it? So that's kind of my personal reflection on that particular concept. But I know it sounds a bit formal, Christian, this, but we do get the family together we try and do it every quarter. I'll get the flip chart out, and we map out what's going on in our world, So they're fully conversant with SaaS and the properties we've got and how far we are with the developments. So we're really immersing them in what we're doing. And I know that comes from coaching and the old moan and groan because Dad's getting his flip chart out again, but they're fully in tune with what we're doing, And again, one of my proudest moments with Ben, I was in fact, it was with Kevin and Mark Stokes. We were at an event at Mercedes-Benz. I was doing some speaking there, and Ben was behind me talking to somebody. And I shouldn't have been doing it, but I was looking at somebody in conversation, but I was listening to Ben. Ben was talking about SaaS. He was explaining to the guy behind me about SaaS. What a proud moment that was. So they are educated and they're aware of it, and they see the benefit. And you've got to put the effort in to get the education across, but that's what we do, So.
Well, it's be good to find out a bit more because, SaaS we know is, almost like a family trust fund, right? So it's something that, you can have members of your family join if you choose to do that as trustees. Have you thought about that? Is that something that you've spoken to them about?
Yeah, absolutely. They're aware of it, and it's been a game changer for us, by the way. Once you understand it and learn it, that was the start of our journey. He's not quite done it, but Ben's got enough kind of going through his business now to think about either setting up his own SaaS or possibly, joining our SaaS. So he's fully aware of it. So he's got a point where he can make a contribution now. So so we have had that discussion certainly with Ben. And he's aware of what we do with it and the rules around it and the power and the strength of it. So. Less so with Owen. Owen's a little bit more short term. He's living for the moment at the moment, I think. But Alex is midway between the two, I think. Yeah, she's getting there. She's getting there. Yeah,
that's the thing, right? We've all got different wealth dynamics, different wealth styles, haven't we? So you have to adapt, and everyone's going to be slightly different with that.
You do indeed. Yeah.
Thinking longer term, then, not just a father, grandfather now, Chris. So, do you worry or do you have concerns over what life will be like in, 10 years, 20 years time? AI is something that's obviously in the news now. Jobs, people, young people living to 100 years old, there'll be a different life, right? And wealth will need to be important, because you can't rely on a job, you can't rely on pensions necessarily.
Yeah, true. You're right. I think we have to move with the times. I think, and sometimes the younger generation move more quickly than we do. If I think about how the speed of reaction of Ben and Alex, in terms of change, I think they respond much more quickly. But having a grandchild it's an extra layer to your why. In wealth we talk about the why, the emotion, and you've got to feel it there when you talk about why you're doing it. And I do every time I speak about it. I know why I'm doing it, and it's about legacy. It's about the kids, and I've shared my why many times. What drove it. But another layer now. I've got a grandchild, Violet. And she's absolutely gorgeous, and I love her to bits. I can't see enough of her, But it motivates me even more to do even more with what we're doing, because it's going to be for her. Yeah, life's going to change. There's no doubt moving forward. But people are always going to need somewhere to live. AI is not going to replace buildings, construction, and that's a key part. That's a key pillar of our wealth strategy. So. Depending on what her interests are, she's always going to have that to fall back on, I think. So that gives me that reassurance, but it motivates me now to keep going, because that's for her.
Yeah.
Well,
you've done a fantastic job, Chris, of building your own wealth, and obviously wonderful children, granddaughter now as well. For anyone listening, Chris, just what would be some of the key moments when you look back over, say, the last 10 years of your own wealth building journey, things that perhaps you might have done differently, or things that have worked really well, which you might pass on as just a few key lessons for anyone listening who's also looking to get to a place of financial independence?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's again another great question. I think the only thing I would have done differently is probably grabbed the education sooner. And it's probably a lot more available now, isn't it? I think. When we were kids, we didn't have the internet, so there wasn't as much. It wasn't as easy to learn about this stuff. So I would probably have done that sooner. I think I was in banking for 25 years. And I wasn't settled probably for the last 5, and I maybe should have pulled the trigger a little bit sooner and put my hand up for redundancy. But can't change that. Lessons for me, I think, are education. It starts with education. You've got to learn this stuff, otherwise you present a lot of risks. That's a key one. Community and connections and contacts. I'm not a natural in the past, I haven't been a natural person to reach out and get help. That's part of my personality, but that's been the key for us. It's people that have led us, and contacts and connections that have led us to the journey that we've kind of been on. Good people that you've got around you, and that's obviously what Wealth Builders is all about. It's about community. So I think education and connection and contacts. I think for me as well, having a clear plan. I'm a bit of an obsessive planner, but having an emotional reason why you're doing it at the end of it. What's the dream? What's on your dream board? Why are you doing it? Tracing myself every year, revisit while we're in Madeira, what we want out of life. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. There's only 4,000 weeks in a lifetime, and we're all going down that journey. But you're aiming towards something. You're doing it for a reason. If you've got clarity around that reason, and you've got colour around it, I think it motivates you when times are tough. So there are a few things that I would share.
And you mentioned Madeira there and clarity, and I know there was a kind of catalyst moment, wasn't there? Perhaps that's an important piece to perhaps mention, right?
It is, Christine. You're right, and So this is 2005. I do believe there's normally a moment in your life that gets you. It's a trigger that gets you to look differently about the rest of your life. Something that happens to you, or something that happens to somebody else. And for me, 2005 was a life-changing moment. I ended up with a pulmonary embolism, which was a blood clot that came from a football injury. Flew to Madeira, ended up in intensive care in Madeira for 2 weeks, and I was lucky to survive it. I always kept myself quite fit, and I think if I'd not been fit, I think I wouldn't have been around now. But 2 weeks in hospital, reflecting on how lucky you were, does make you think about what you want out of the rest of your life. And that was my trigger. There's no doubt about it. Alex, my daughter, is another kind of driving force. Alex won't mind me sharing, but she's got a disease called cystic fibrosis, which is a very, very difficult disease to deal with. It certainly was as a child. So again, that focuses your mind on the here and the now. A lot of us wait too long. We wait until until we've retired. And then start thinking about living. That's too late. We need to start living now. And all the wealth building stuff that we've kind of learned has almost allowed us to bring things forward. enjoy life now, you know, because you never know what's around the corner. So they were my triggers. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. And, you know, it's been really good having this conversation with you today, Chris. Was there anything else that you'd noted that you perhaps you wanted to mention?
I suppose that another thing that I would say is gratitude. Being grateful is an important part of making yourself feel good. And the more you give, the more you get back. You know, it's not all about giving to receive back, but often the more you give out and the more you help other people, it does often come back in different ways. I think that's a standout for me. And we have a gratitude jar. I think I've talked about this before. We've got a jar traced to myself, and every time something good happens in our life, or we do something for somebody else, or somebody does something for us, we put it on a post-it note and stick it in the jar, and then we take it to Madeira with us, and we open it in Madeira. I'll tell you, it's emotional. It really is, because you forget how good your year's been. Yeah. So there's another little tip.
And is that something that you introduced to the whole family? You know, do you sit around the table? Is there any kind of activities where, I know you mentioned the kind of getting the flip chart out, but with regards to the jar?
I'll be honest, Christina, I've shared it with clients, with coaching clients, but I've not shared it with the kids. But next time we get together, it'll be on the agenda.
Post-its out.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, good. And, you know, that's, I guess, you know, important. You know, we're talking wealth and finance, you know, as a broad topic here on the podcast, but ultimately it's about just instilling good values in our children and the next generation, isn't it?
100%, and that is a key word as well. And I know it sounds a bit formal. We use Dropbox, and we've got a list of our family values, and there's quite a lot on there. And everybody contributed to that list of family values, you know, things that are important to us all. And I always go to John DeMartini, The Values Factor, and that's a worthwhile read for people, just to tune into that and just figure out what is it that makes you tick. What are the top 5 things that make you tick? And right at the top of ours is family. Right at the top of Chris Payton's is family. So it's interesting how values draw you towards people that have got similar values. So yeah, the kids are aware of values. They've contributed to our values. Really, really important. And it sounds a bit structured, sounds a bit formal, but that's what we do. I'm just going to share one more thing that I do with the kids when I'm coaching them, because I coach them all three of them. And I use something called a WIFLE, and it's WIFLE, what I feel like expressing, right? And I do it in the office here. And initially they hated it. You know, Dad, what's this WIFLE all about? What do I feel like expressing? The rules are: you talk, I'll listen. Because generally we're not great listeners. People are generally not very active listeners. Just share how you feel, what's on your mind. And it's amazing how much you get from your children just by giving them that space to share how they feel. The first couple are a little bit stilted, but as they get into it, you know, you really start to get underneath the skin of how your kids feel about money, about life, you know, because often they're not prepared to share. So WIFLE, just have a think about it. Try it on your partner, try it on your kids.
Yeah, no, I like that. Chris, it's been great speaking with you today, as always. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. And, you know, wish you and the family all the best, and look forward to our next time when we chat.
And thanks for all you and Kevin have done for us.
Good stuff from Chris there. Lots of lessons. Really enjoy speaking with Chris every time. A very humble guy. And before we dive into some of those great lessons, let's head over to Trustpilot and read out one of our reviews from the last 7 days. So thank you always to anyone who comes and takes a few minutes to leave us a review, whether you're a member or you're purely just a listener and you're enjoying the content that we're providing every week. So in fact, this review is from Paul, who I met a couple of weeks ago in London at the Cashflow 101 evening. And Paul has said, this is the first opportunity that I've had to go to a meetup event, and it really helps meeting real people and being able to socialize. And although we were just playing a board game, it was very relevant to life, and it shows how to best thrive in the modern economy.
Very nice. And I think one of the spin-offs from that review plus your conversation with Chris is the value of connection. All too often life is experienced best through collaboration, connection, community. But what seems to be happening in schools is, especially when it comes to the financial education, if there's any at all, is what we call didactic education, Chris, which is just teaching at the theory, as Chris refers to it. And theory's okay, but theory doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you to a place of understanding, but understanding without action is meaningless when it comes to building wealth for you and building wealth for your family and passing on a great legacy, because wisdom has got to be exchanged. Knowledge and understanding and action have got to follow. And what's pleasing for me is Chris followed that. But I have to tell you, there was a time when he hesitated.
Mm-hmm.
He's a humble man, as you say, and I admire his humility. Because when I first met Chris, and one of the first things we were talking about doing was using his pension schemes from his old banking days, both him and Tracy. And I think it took them about a year to wrestle with it. And we're very happy, aren't we? People taking their time, and often we'll see people listening, watching us on a video or listening to a podcast, and that following will lead them a little bit closer and closer and closer, a bit like planting seeds, really. And when that seed germinates, it's great. Well, Chris, it took a year for that seed to germinate, and he almost didn't move forward. He almost took the easy step of the final salary pension. Now, I don't mean easy for anybody, but easier for him in terms of he then wouldn't have had any decisions to make. But I think he used the words now, since we created the SAS together, game changer. And SAS comes up in his conversation a few times, not least when he was earwigging on Ben at an event, which I know he shouldn't have done, because he should have been concentrating on the person. But he's a proud man, isn't he? And you can see the pride he's taking in his family as they embrace some of these lessons. And I think they embrace them better when there's something happening, when there's some visibility, and not just seeing, but touching, feeling, doing, engaging the senses in many different ways. And I think he's definitely been doing that, albeit I'm not certain about the flip charts, though.
Really? Well, I know you do your pick and pensions as a way of getting the family together to have these family wealth discussions. And a few weeks ago, we had Joanna Martin talking about their family values and bringing those out around the table and making sure that they're living by those values. So it's interesting, isn't it, to hear the different ways that families are having these chats.
I think so. And one of the common denominators in that is a cadence, doing it on a regular basis. So I think Joanna, well, she's obviously doing it regularly enough because she had to laminate them, I'm sure, because of all the spillages that would occur if she's doing it over meal times. But we're seeing the cadence happening, that education transfer happening in meal times. Certainly for me, it was always a mealtime issue. I think that's probably one of the most popular, whether it's getting together and having a discussion. Yes, there's always a joke about, well, Dad's talking about SAS again, and that certainly happened in my life, and it happening in Chris's too. But it's still good if the message is getting across, because you can't really have a teacher there to just give a lesson. In the end, the lessons have got to be absorbed, and they do that by degrees, and they do that by consistency. And Chris done a great job with that consistency. I'm certain I've done that. Joanna's doing that, and many of our family members will be inspired by somebody else's story, won't they? They'll go, now that's a good idea, I'll copy that. And because you don't get that roadmap, you don't get that manual of how to teach finance, how to bring financial education to children of different ages with different learning styles, different mentalities, spenders, savers, they're all very different. So yeah, he's done a good job, and I hope he's inspiring some other families to copy what he's doing, or inspiration will come from somewhere else. But the inspiration to start is always a catalyst, and we call that the first ROI, Chris, in WealthBuilders, don't we? That reason to overcome inertia, ROI, reason to overcome inertia. Because an object at rest stays at rest. And most people, when it comes to family wealth and wealth in general, are at rest. Their money's not working hard. They're trading time for money. It's not building wealth. It's a life, but it's not a wealthy life, and it isn't a sustainable life. And what we try and advocate is gradually changing that and moving that over. And I think that happens at different speeds for different people. And you heard Chris say that his 3 kids are learning lessons, but they're learning them at different speeds. They're applying them in different ways. And none of them are yet fully, in a way, asset owning. They're gradually getting there. But Chris himself took a while to get to those assets, as he said. His own family lessons at home were all about scarcity. You could hear the language he was choosing. Like, I can remember that language in my family. You know, it was interesting. He was saying, you know, money don't grow on trees, and shut that door. You're letting all the heat out. You know, I don't know if that's a good Yorkshire accent or not, but you get the point.
Really good.
You know, that style of just passing on the scarcity through the language you use. So whatever you do, they observe. Whatever you say, they observe. And giving lessons is best done once you've got to a place where you've got some lessons to teach. And I think that was that was the big observation for me, actually, that a smart man, a smart family, intellectually, obviously very sound, you know, maths, economics, accountant, worked in banking for many years, super smart guy. But the financial lessons on building wealth weren't there. And it was an interesting one. And I'm just delighted, and I'm not trying to take too much credit for anything, but I'm delighted to have influenced Chris in some small way to help encourage him to make the transition. And it was me who connected him to his current business partner, Christopher. And I'm delighted to have done that, because they're both extraordinary people with lots to share, lots to give, and you can hear Chris is paying it forward. However, I do want to take issue with one thing that Chris said, if you don't mind, which is, he said, we live 4,000 weeks. I think it's nearer 5,000 now, as our children today are living longer. And that means it's even tougher. I mean, it's still a shocker when you think we're going to live 5,000 weeks and that's it. But that's true. And I think as we're living longer, the need for that education has become more pressing. And Chris is doing a good job, and I'm hoping that more and more people will do a good job too, because I think it's really important, Chris. We talk about legacy a lot, and you could see it was important to him too. But in my view, it's not what you leave your next generation, it's what you leave within them that counts. And financial education is a legacy in itself, and it's probably the best legacy, because you create responsibility, not just to make informed decisions rather than uninformed ones, but additionally, hopefully, they build up enough wisdom to manage whatever's left to them by those who are taking the steps to build wealth. So the two things go together. Do you see what I mean? That if Chris and Tracy build great wealth, which they are, there's no point passing it on, or there is a point of passing it on, but it will have a poorer effect and a less longer lasting impact if all they do is consume it. So if they learn the lessons, and hopefully whatever principles and practices he wants to share about what he wants that legacy to look like, him and Tracy together, of course, then that legacy should perpetuate and last a lot longer and do a lot more good. And that's kind of the message of Wealth Builders now, isn't it? It's about that combination. Build your wealth, yes, but build the wisdom for it to do really good work for many, many years after your passing.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, well said. And these are all the lessons that we've encapsulated into Wealth Builders for Families. And yes, the founder launch offer is now closed. However, if you're listening and this is resonating, if you want to find out how you can get more involved, then do head over to our website, wealthbuilders.co.uk/families, and make sure you register your details so that we can involve you and get you learning and embodying everything that we've discussed today. And Chris, thank you for giving us your input and your time. We always appreciate that. Okay, I think that covers everything for today's episode, Kevin. And that was a good one, as always. We'll be back same time, same place next week.
We will indeed. Until then, my friend, see ya.